In 1994, Hisashi Koinuma joined Japanese game developer Koei as a programmer. He chose Koei for a number of reasons, but chief among them were his love of the company's Romance of the Three Kingdoms strategy series and his desire to create a fighting game. He had concluded that companies that already had a presence in the fighting game scene, such as Capcom or SNK, would already have a lot of staff with their own ideas for fighting games that would serve as rivals to his own. Whereas if he joined a company that had never produced a fighting game before, that would not be the case. Within 2 years, Koinuma was placed on Koei's newly established Omega Force development team, where he served as the main programmer on the team's first ever game. The game was a one-on-one fighter that drew on the same historical events as Romance of the Three Kingdoms. On February 28, 1997, Japanese players got their hands on Sengoku Musou, translated as Three Kingdoms Unrivaled in English, while June and December of that year brought the game to North America and Europe as Dynasty Warriors. The original Dynasty Warriors is a PlayStation exclusive weapon-based fighter similar to Namco's Soul Calibur series. The key difference, however, is that the roster of Koei's game consists almost exclusively of real historical figures and battlefields from China's Three Kingdoms era. The playable roster is composed of 4 popular figures from each kingdom of Wei, Wu and Shu, such as Shu officer Zhao Yun, Wu strategist Zhou Yu, and Wei founder Cao Cao, in addition to the famous handmaiden Diao Chan, and the mighty warrior Lu Bu as the game's final boss. It also features Japanese warlords Oda Nobunaga and Toyotomi Hideyoshi as nods to Koei's other strategy series, Nobunaga's Ambition.
But 1998's Destrega would be the only other fighting game Omega Force would produce. Sony's PlayStation 2 was on the horizon, and Omega Force wanted their sequel to stand out in the fighting game boom going on at the time. As such, the team shifted to a new genre entirely, moving away from one-on-one duels and emphasizing the idea of a battlefield. The new game was a hack-and-slash game that faced the player with hundreds of enemies they could annihilate with ease.
To differentiate the game from its predecessor, the word Shin, or true, was added to the front of the title, as Omega Force considered Shin Sengoku Musou to be a spin-off, rather than a true sequel. In the West, however, the game was branded as a direct sequel, Dynasty Warriors 2. This was presumably for brand recognition, as the Three Kingdoms era isn't as well known in the West as it is in the East, where it can be sold on the setting alone. Ever since, the Western releases have maintained a higher number than their Eastern counterparts.
Despite being a new series, the game carried over the entire playable roster from the previous game, excluding the Sengoku era guest fighters. An additional 14 characters were added, bringing the game's playable roster up to 28, including Shu founder Liu Bei, Wu founder Sun Quan, and Wei strategist Sima Yi. The game's campaigns cover 8 famous battles from the Yellow Turban Rebellion in 184 up until 234's Battle of Wuzhong Plains. The game's reviews were roughly equal to those of its predecessor, and it sold well enough to produce a direct sequel. Since the series is based on historical events, sequels will find new ways to adapt the same events and add new battles and characters.
Dynasty Warriors 3's biggest criticism was that the characters not affiliated with any of the Three Kingdoms, such as Lu Bu, do not have stories of their own, being limited to use in free mode. This was remedied in the standalone expansion Shin Sengoku Musou 2 Musoudan, or Dynasty Warriors 3 Extreme Legends. These expansions have remained a regular part of the franchise ever since, with only 2 installments not receiving one.
2003's Dynasty Warriors 4 was the first entry in the series to feature custom characters, faction-focused campaigns, and branching storylines. Custom characters would become standard for many spin-off projects, emphasis on factions would become the standard with Dynasty Warriors 7 and Samurai Warriors 4, and branching stories would feature in a few select titles.
After the release of Dynasty Warriors 3, Koinuma wanted to create a game based on Japan's own history in the popular Sengoku era. He pitched the idea as the action equivalent of Nobunaga's Ambition, in much the same way that Dynasty Warriors can be considered the action equivalent of Romance of the Three Kingdoms. He felt that the game could focus on the individual characters instead of the larger factions of Dynasty Warriors, an idea that would later be integrated into Dynasty Warriors itself. Although the project was approved by the summer of 2002, development of Sengoku Musou, or Samurai Warriors in the West, was pushed back until the completion of Extreme Legends, finally seeing release in early 2004. Samurai Warriors proved successful enough to become its own series with the same types of expansions and spin-offs as Dynasty Warriors.
Later, in 2004, Dynasty Warriors 4 received its second spin-off title, Dynasty Warriors 4 Empires. The goal in Empires, rather than battling through historical scenarios, is to battle across a divided China at the player's own discretion, eliminating rival warlords and seizing their own territory until the land is united under the player. Like Extreme Legends, Empires has also become a staple spin-off type, which every main Dynasty and Samurai Warriors game released afterwards has received.
Samurai Warriors received its own Extreme Legends expansion that year. This was the first expansion to add new characters, which would become the standard a few years later. But Samurai Warriors has been known to subtract the odd character or two from installment to installment.
In December of that year, the franchise saw its first portable spin-off, Dynasty Warriors for the PlayStation Portable. As was standard for the time, system limitations of handheld devices forced the game to have a different structure, utilizing a grid-based map and small enemy unit encounters.
The overall success of the Musou franchise has led to a number of imitators and competitors. The best known and most successful example is Capcom's Sengoku Basara series, originally released in the West as Devil Kings. This series, like Samurai Warriors, is based on the Sengoku era, but with a Devil May Cry flair. Sadly, this series has only seen 2 entries released in the West due to poor sales. The anime is pretty damn epic though, I'll tell you that for free.
2006 saw the release of the Mahjong-themed spin-off, Jan Sangoku Musou, exclusively in Japan.
Later that year, the series was adapted into an MMO, Shin Sengoku Musou BB, using Dynasty Warriors 5 as its base. The game was replaced by a less technically demanding version, Shin Sengoku Musou Online, a year later. The game was eventually released in North America in late 2010. While the American version was discontinued in 2014, the Japanese version continues to this day with new content based on more recent entries being added regularly.
Around the same time, Bandai Namco were looking into new genres for games based on the popular Gundam franchise. They contacted Koei to produce a Warriors title based on the brand, but remained mostly hands-off to keep the project a purely Warriors experience. In 2007, the franchise's first PS3 title and its first licensed title was released, Gundam Musou, or Dynasty Warriors Gundam. The game features characters and stories from across the Gundam franchise, as well as some completely original ones. The game has since received 3 sequels.
2007 also marked the series' 10th anniversary. To mark the occasion, Koei decided to create a game that fans had been pining for ever since the release of Samurai Warriors, a true encounter between Dynasty and Samurai. It was also intended to be a send-off to the PlayStation 2 before moving on to the 7th generation of consoles. The result was Musou Orochi, or Warriors Orochi. The game features the full casts of Dynasty Warriors 5 and Samurai Warriors 2, along with newcomers Orochi and Daji from Japanese and Chinese mythology. To facilitate the 7 to 9 character roster, the game features a 3-man team system that allows the player to swap characters out at will. Additionally, the ability to summon a horse was made standard for the entire cast. These mechanics would continue to appear in subsequent games across the franchise.
The game marked the first Warriors portable title to be a direct port of a console release, which became the standard from Dynasty Warriors 8 onwards. The game proved successful enough to warrant a sequel the following year, Musou Orochi Mao Seiren, or Unrivaled Orochi Rebirth of the Demon Lord, released in the West as Warriors Orochi 2. Another sequel was released following Dynasty Warriors 7 and Samurai Warriors 3, titled Musou Orochi 2 in the East and Warriors Orochi 3 in the West.
Although not technically a true Warriors game, Bladestorm: The 100 Years' War released the same year. It plays relatively similar to Warriors games, but with a focus on leading a unit into battle instead of the usual 1 vs 100 approach, and being able to select the side the player will fight for per battle. While the game failed to garner the same success as true Warriors games, it was popular enough to receive an enhanced port in 2014.
The first mainline Warriors game designed for 7th generation consoles was Dynasty Warriors 6 in 2007. The mechanics and visuals received a massive overhaul, but received heavy criticism for the simplified combat, reduced playable roster, character designs, and the unpopular Rimbu system, which required the player to remain on the offensive to maintain a full moveset. The Rimbu system would be dropped in subsequent Dynasty Warriors 6 spin-offs, while other mechanics would have to wait to be changed in the next main entry.
In August 2008, chairman of Tecmo Yoshimi Yasuda resigned from the company following a series of lawsuits from unpaid employees. Although Square Enix intended to perform a friendly takeover, Koei put forward an offer for Tecmo to merge with them instead. Tecmo accepted, forming koei-tecmo, known initially in the West as tecmo-koei. This merger has since allowed a number of crossovers between both companies' franchises, as well as Tecmo's famed Team Ninja studio to work on various Warriors spin-offs.
The PSP saw the Dynasty Warriors 6 spin-off Shin Sengoku Musou Multi-Raid, or Dynasty Warriors Strike Force, released in 2009. The game's structure is similar to Monster Hunter with its mission-focused campaign, massive enemy creatures, and emphasis on a 4-man team. Each character was also given a Fury form, a Dragon Ball-esque transformation that allows the player to dash and glide in similar fashion to the Dynasty Warriors Gundam games. The game was later ported to consoles with additional missions and Meng Huo added, as well as a sequel with new characters and a new story.
2010 saw the release of another licensed title, this time based on Tetsuro Hara and Yoshiyuki Okamura's Fist of the North Star manga, unveiled at Tokyo Game Show 2009 as Hokuto Musou, and released the following year as Fist of the North Star, Ken's Rage in the West. The game's combat and animations were slowed to appear more realistic at Hara's request. The game's sequel, Shin Hokuto Musou, or Ken's Rage 2, was released in 2012 to celebrate Fist of the North Star's 30th anniversary.
In 2011, the Nintendo 3DS released with Sengoku Musou Chronicle, released in the West as Samurai Warriors Chronicles as a launch title. The game drew from the stages and characters from Samurai Warriors 3, but with a more linear and more historically accurate campaign. The game also introduced a new take on the team system with up to 4 playable characters active at once, each acting independently of the player's current character. These additions would later be tweaked and implemented into the main series. It was also the first Warriors title released in the West without an English dub, which has become more and more common as time goes on. Chronicles has since received 2 sequels.
A month later, Tecmo-koei Canada released Warriors Legends of Troy, released in Japan as Troy Musou. The game features the Trojan War as its setting and features a greater level of violence than typical Warriors games, as part of the team's attempt to appeal more towards players who don't care for Omega Force's more Eastern-themed games.
Also in 2011, Koei celebrated the 10th anniversary of Shin Sengoku Musou with the release of Dynasty Warriors 7. Although slated as a PlayStation 3 exclusive due to the franchise's long history with the brand, the game was also released on the Xbox 360 in the West. The game is seen as a return to form following the previous entry, but carrying over elements from that game that had proven popular among fans. It's also featured faction-focused campaigns again, which would remain the standard from then on. The game was also the first to expand beyond the Battle of Wuzhong Plains with the new Jin campaign, focused on the Suma clan and the rise of the Jin dynasty.
In the lead up to the game's Extreme Legends expansion, Weekly Famitsu held a poll asking fans which historical figure should be included. With Wei's Guoja winning, a pair of concepts were then released in the magazine to showcase what the character might look like in the final game. The same was then done with the 8th game.
Shin Unozawa, vice president of D3 Publisher, approached Koei to discuss a Warriors game based off the Shonen Jump series One Piece. Fellow Jump series Dragon Ball was also considered. Originally titled One Piece Musou, One Piece creator Eiichiro Oda changed the name to One Piece Kaizoku Musou, or One Piece Pirates Unrivaled. And when asked if he could draw the game's cover art, Oda rejected the idea, believing that the game's character models were very impressive and would be better suited to headline the game. The game released in 2012 with the Western release titled One Piece Pirate Warriors. The game has since received 2 sequels.
That same year, Koei teamed up with the Pokemon Company to produce a crossover between Pokemon and Nobunaga's Ambition. Pokemon plus Nobunaga no Yabo, released in the West as Pokemon Conquest, utilizes character designs from Samurai Warriors 3 for the game's human cast for easier identification. Each character is also assigned a default partner Pokemon based on their personality or appearance, such as Nobunaga's Zekrom or Oichi's Jigglypuff.
2014 marked the 10th anniversary of Samurai Warriors. To celebrate the occasion, a big multimedia push was made. Samurai Warriors 4 focused on a 2-man team featuring faction-focused stories with a clear emphasis on the story of Sanada Yukimura and his older brother Nobuyuki. In addition to the game, a 3-part manga project, a drama and image song collection, and an animated TV special by TYO Animations were produced. The manga follows Ishida Mitsunari, Date Masamune, and Sanada Nobuyuki, while the anime centers on the first siege of Ueda Castle.
The Japan-exclusive mobile game Shin Sengoku Musou Blast featured a number of brand new characters and alternate designs for established characters. While not released in the West, developers stated that the popular new characters and designs have a chance of carrying over to the main series.
2014 was another milestone for the franchise, seeing the release of the first title based off of another video game franchise, Zelda Musou, or as we call it in the West, Hyrule Warriors. The game was released on Wii U, featuring various characters and settings from the Legend of Zelda series. Originally pitched as a more traditional Zelda game, Zelda creator Shigeru Miyamoto rejected the idea as pointless unless it was more akin to Warriors. The game was overhauled to be a more standard Musou game with Zelda mechanics and elements on top. It proved popular with both fans and non-fans alike with both its gameplay and downloadable content. The game has received an enhanced port on the 3DS featuring the Chronicle's team system.
The Samurai Warriors anniversary celebration continued through 2015 with the release of a 12-episode anime series that continues the story from the special. The series features original designs for Tokugawa Hidetada and Toyotomi Hideyori, and also debuted newcomer Ii Naomasa a few weeks ahead of his game debut in Samurai Warriors 4 2. An official home release from Funimation is set for release in March of 2017.
Square Enix, seeking to create an action adaptation of their Dragon Quest series for the franchise's return to PlayStation consoles, collaborated with Koei to produce Dragon Quest Heroes, The World Tree's Woe, and The Blight Below. While not strictly a Warriors game, the game controls very similarly to Warriors. The game's Japanese cast consists of popular voice actors who are also Dragon Quest fans. The game has received a sequel, with a port of the two games planned for the Nintendo Switch.
Another anime licensed title released in 2015, based on the 2015 anime adaptation of Hiromu Arakawa's manga adaptation of Yoshiki Tanaka's Arslan Senki novel series. Arslan Senki Musou, released in the West as Arslan the Warriors of Legend, covers the anime's first season.
The Samurai Warriors celebration continued into 2016, with the series I Naotora being added to Dead or Alive 5 Last Round via DLC, alongside costumes of Samurai Warriors 4 characters for the rest of the cast.
To mark the 15th anniversary of Shin Sengoku Musou in 2016, koei-tecmo released Shin Sengoku Musou Iketsuden, released as a digital exclusive Dynasty Warriors Godseekers in the West. The game stars series poster boy Zhao Yun and a pair of original characters in a fantasy story with gameplay derived from the Iketsuden series.
Yet another manga-based title, Berserk Musou, released in Japan in late 2016, with an early 2017 release in the West as Berserk and the Band of the Hawk. The game was conceived after Koei Numa discussed his love of Berserk with other staff members. The team aimed to maintain the source material's dark and violent themes, leading to their first Sero D release since Ken's Rage 2.
To tie into NHK drama Sanada Maru and rival Capcom's Sengoku Basara Sanada Yukimura Den, Koei closed out 2016 with Sengoku Musou Sanada Maru, set for release in the West as Samurai Warriors Spirit of Sanada in May. The game centers on the story of the Sanada clan, with 6 new characters and new features including a day-night cycle, farming activities, and key characters aging as the story progresses.
To celebrate the franchise's 20th anniversary, Koei intended to produce a 4th Warriors Orochi game, but instead decided to create a new crossover game with a much smaller roster to give each character more focus. Musou Stars is set for release in early March with a roster of around 30 characters from across all of koei-tecmo's franchises, including Dynasty Samurai Warriors, Dead or Alive, Ninja Gaiden, Tokiden, and Atelier. One of these characters is Zhou Tsang, debuting here ahead of his full appearance in Dynasty Warriors 9.
Fire Emblem Musou, or Fire Emblem Warriors, will release in late 2017 for the Nintendo Switch and new 3DS, featuring popular Fire Emblem characters including Chrom, Marth, and Corrin.
Dynasty Warriors 9 is set to be a massive overhaul of the Warriors formula. The game will feature a fully open world map of China, explorable towns, and all 83 characters returning with newcomers. We're looking at you, Joe Sang. Don't disappoint us.
There is also a live-action Dynasty Warriors movie in the works, directed by Roy Hin Young Chow and produced by China 3D. The film will begin shooting in 2017 and release in China, Hong Kong, and Macau in 2018.
The Warriors franchise currently consists of around 80 games and shows no signs of slowing down. While many pass them off as simple, repetitive button mashers, they remain beloved by those who take the time to look more deeply into the mechanics and stories of the games to find an incredibly cathartic and empowering gameplay experience. With so many settings, each bringing their own stories, rosters, and mechanics to the table, there are plenty of ways to experience and enjoy Koei's flagship series. Here's to another 20 years, ye true warriors of the Three Kingdoms.